Hello and welcome to the Marketing Times Analytics Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Sofronas, and today I'm on with Kylie Kullack. Kylie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you. And thanks again for having me. This is going to be fun. I'm Kylie Kullack. I'm head of client engagement at an agency called Struck with specific expertise in the realm of brand transformation, specifically within kind of the destination marketing, outdoor rec, and biotech areas.
Interesting. I'm curious, what's the thread between those? Is it a particular type of consumer? What unites those areas?
Sure. I think the reason why those three sectors have really bubbled up, not only are we passionate about them as an organization, but we find within those sectors they are more inclined for that brand transformation piece, particularly from a biotech perspective. For example, we work with companies who are in stealth mode all the way up through Series A, Series B, through IPO and after. And so it's helping brands transition and position themselves for that growth and that kind of next step, if you will, in their evolution.
This podcast is brought to you by Adverity. Are you struggling with marketing reporting? There is another way. With Adverity, whether you're working across 10 or 100 different marketing channels, you can effortlessly manage all of your marketing performance data in a single location to make reporting as easy as clicking a button. The Adverity solution also scales with your business, so as your business grows, the tool grows with you. So remove the stress of reporting and book a demo at adverity.com using the link in the description. Thank you. And now, back to the podcast. And what exactly is destination marketing?
So that is your travel and tourism, either your destinations as a state or country, if you will, or even down to hotels or local counties.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do see sometimes advertisements for a particular city. They'll try to get people to visit the city, and they'll be advertising the various attractions and so forth. Do you work with a lot of governments and states for that kind of tourism?
Yes, yeah, we have been the agency of record for the state of Utah for about 17 years. And then we've also worked with various entities, whether it's Monterey County or Scottsdale, Arizona, other destinations, as well as down to ski resorts. We have a number of those out west and have worked well in positioning them, defining their brand, and then developing the brand campaigns to attract the right visitors. That's a whole nother bundle of yarn that could be a long conversation, right? Because if you're not familiar with destination marketing, they are at a little bit of a crossroads, if you will, particularly for those who have actually cracked the nut and kind of defined themselves as a brand and have a really good positioning that brings folks to visit. It's then balancing the destination marketing with destination management and ensuring that they're attracting the right visitors who are going to respect the land, respect the culture, respect the locals, if you will, and balancing and educating the locals who might be a little frustrated by the influx of folks and the benefits of what that tourism revenue is going to do for their local community. But that could be another topic.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And yeah, maybe we'll get more into that. Taking a step back, talking about how you got into this role working in the marketing area in brand transformation. Tell us about your education and how you got into this role.
Sure. I'd say that I come from a family of marketers. A number of my family, father, mother, sister, are all pretty well established within the marketing realm. And so it's always been a topic around the table. I was fortunate to go to a great liberal arts school down in New Orleans, Tulane University. And then from there, went straight into the advertising world back in my hometown of New York City and worked my way through the agency conglomerates with the WPPs and the Grays of the world, specifically within the media planning and buying sector, which is very technical and often folks don't actually understand what that is. And then proceeded to work within that industry, working with blue chip and kind of Fortune 500 companies. And then my now husband, and I at the time decided we needed a little bit of a change of pace in our life. And so we actually up and moved to Park City, Utah, which is quite the different environment than New York City, but we loved it. We actually started our own little side business, which was a great experience from an entrepreneurial perspective and learning to have empathy for those clients of yours who come to you, and then found Struck and have been with Struck ever since. So I think we're going on 13 years. And I'd say we are a little bit different than your traditional agencies where you have your traditional account management, your producers, or project management. I have structured the team in such a way that it is called client engagement. And the client engagement team is made up of both the strategists as well as your client service function, and they really work as a team. And whereas we want our classically trained strategists to be learning the skill set of your client service and understanding empathy and understanding your client's perspective and advocating for their needs, but also having the client service learning from the strategist on a regular basis of thinking analytically, understanding what from the very outset, from our very early new business conversations, structuring our engagements based on engagement and measurement and how we're going to deliver at the end of our engagement.
So what are some of the KPIs that you focus on when you're breaking down engagement? What exactly are you looking at engagement on? Is it on social media? Is it engagement in terms of foot traffic maybe? Or what kind of engagement are you looking at? And then what other variables do you look at for success?
I would say we have quite the toolkit, and we also, while we have those three sectors that we focus primarily within, the KPIs vary dramatically based on the client's goals. And so from that new business conversation, we sit down very clearly and ask, once the NDA has been put in place, what does success look like for year 1, year 3, year 5? And how can we help develop the roadmap on how to prioritize how we achieve those goals? And then what measurement toolkits we'll put into place to make sure that we are measuring within the right cadence for ongoing optimization as necessary. In our strategic approach, we really do a diagnostic where we're looking at everything from competitive research to mass market surveys to any proprietary research that the client has that then informs how we go and develop our strategic approach that then informs obviously our tactical executions, whether that's a brand, visual identity development, a brand campaign, merchandising. We have Structure, which is an entity that focuses entirely on environmental and experiential design. So whether that's office space experience or toy shops or amusement parks, what are the branded touch points that we're ensuring are woven through that customer experience so that there's a consistent and cohesive experience of the brand for our customers? And then, as you noted, the measurement piece, whether that's your annual brand plan, your mass market survey. If we're working with a partner for an actual campaign, we're very closely tied to the media team to ensure that we're tracking the performance of the creative campaign. Generally, every 2 weeks, we want to look at the KPIs. Again, there are so many that you can look at. It's working with the client and the partner teams at the very outset to prioritize the top 3 that we need to keep an eye on, because I think in this day and age, there are so many data points that we think that oftentimes our clients get a little analysis paralysis when they're looking at so many different proof points and trying to understand what's actually going to move the needle. So to long-winded answer of it is very much customized to our clients and their ultimate goals.
That makes sense. Specific to the destination marketing piece, how do you measure success in that kind of a campaign?
Sure. Again, there are lots of KPIs within the mix, working with some key destinations. Ultimately, there is, and as a government entity, likely they will be audited. So they need to ensure that they're return on investment, right? Because a lot of those funds for their efforts are coming from the state or the legislature. So they need to prove the value that it's working. So oftentimes we'll work with partners like a SMARI, who is a nationally recognized research company, who will do pre-awareness and then post-visitation and actually calculate the ROI based on the ad spend by that destination. We obviously want to make sure that we're looking at creative performance and ensuring that the messages that we are looking to communicate are resonating with our audiences. And that entails everything from pre-market testing, so pre-launch, ensuring that we've done everything from eye tracking to EEG, like your brain tracking, making sure that the logo or the imagery is resonating and that they're catching it. And if not, we need to make those modifications before the final product gets launched and put paid media behind it. So I would say from a state or government perspective, it's going to be that ROI. I think you're also going to see with that destination management piece a shift from just ROI, but also extended length of stay. So ensuring that your visitors are engaging in the local communities, shopping at the local stores, eating at the local dining facilities, and really interacting with the local community and spending the money and infusing their money back into that local economy.
Makes sense. And what kind of tactics or placements would you look at for a destination advertising campaign? Is it TV ads, social media? What do you tend to gravitate towards for that kind of a campaign?
Sure. We, as with any other industry, want to ensure that we're communicating the right messages throughout the marketing funnel, if you will. So, from a destination perspective, a lot of the heavy lifting is more about getting into the consideration set. So, making sure that the awareness is there and based on the traveler or the desired consumer, understanding their media profile habits. So, ensuring that we're touching all of the key touch points, whether it is video overall in whatever platform that is consumed, whether it is your TV or your laptop or iPad. Social is obviously very much included. And it's this mix of ensuring that as you work from the top of the funnel of awareness all the way down to, okay, you visited and now we want you to promote your visit and talk about what a great visit it was. Moving the levers across all the different media channels and in an appropriate way, right? Like social media might have a larger play on your in market and what do we want you to be talking about while you're in our market and communicating and or sharing after your trip on your social media channels, whereas it might not play as big of a role in the overall awareness piece.
That makes sense. And for a biotech company, how does that differ? How would the placements typically differ?
Yeah, it's really interesting because in the biotech space, it's not necessarily your B2C play. Oftentimes, it's more of a communicating B2B. You're communicating to investors. You're about to do a big raise and you need to communicate what it is your brand is and what you're offering and also the science behind it and what your pipeline is. And then also, it's also a big recruitment piece, right? So how do we ensure that we're bringing in the most talented scientists and talent to help them advance the various medicines and or clinical trials that they have underway? So I would say for most of the biotech, we aren't really talking about it's more about really having a firm positioning, really have a firm brand, your digital experience and your pipeline as it exists on your website is really compelling. And then that are going to be most powerful for you to advance your business, like your investor PowerPoint or your conference experience booth. What is that branded environment that's going to help position you best with the audiences that you're looking to attract?
And then how do you do that research to figure out what the audience resonates best with?
A lot of it, we understand, of course, that our clients know their business better than we do. They live it and breathe it every single day. So a lot of it is involved with kind of that stakeholder interviews, if you will, and understanding from the key decision makers. We have these one-on-one conversations. We hear from them who they believe that their current, but then also ideal consumers and audiences are, and ensure that there's alignment, quite frankly, across that team. And the reason why we do it one-on-one is so that we can have a really candid, open conversation. And sometimes we have had a situation where the stakeholders are not aligned as to who they believe their audiences are. And that allows us to then have a conversation, say, hey, had some interesting conversations, heard some different things. Let's align. And then, of course, we pair that with our overall competitive research, understanding the category, understanding that the drugs that they're looking to target. Are they looking to go clinical? Are they looking to get folks to enroll in trials? So really understanding from the client first who they believe their target is, and then help mapping onto that kind of the data behind it to help refine that approach.
Speaking about that data, what are some of the challenges you faced when you're implementing analytics and measuring KPIs for these different campaigns?
I would say we don't often because we have learned to be very scrappy in how we approach it. We love it when our clients commit to and see the value and kind of investing in an annual survey that will help not only benchmark from the beginning of our engagement, but then track ideally growth on the cadence that we're looking to refresh it. That said, for those who aren't necessarily as funded or ready to invest, we've come up with very creative ways on making sure that we at least have some core KPIs that we can say, okay, let's just make sure that we have something to show that we are moving the needle in the right way. And, or if not, how we can course correct pretty quickly rather than have it live out there and not being able to address it, because this is their brand. And we want to work with our clients in a partnership level where we're invested. And that's why we have that conversation up front of understanding their business, understanding not only their immediate needs, but what is that runway look for them so that we can really help them. And from a marketing perspective, they don't often have, from a biotech perspective, the marketing in-house expertise. So how can we be that extended team, if you will, to help them navigate what they need to be focusing on now, but also 6 months, 12 months from now. If, for your point about the DMOs, they understand that there needs to be some very finite data points that they need to deliver and report back to their boards, report back to the government. So that is always baked into any kind of marketing budget overall.
That makes sense. So switching gears, I want to learn about how through your career you've seen the technologies used in these marketing campaigns change, and if you're using AI at all in your current campaigns.
Sure. Yeah. I think, having been in this 15, 20 years, yes, things have changed, right? From everything from counting your TV GRPs and ensuring you're hitting your benchmarks and across the key networks. That has dramatically, obviously, changed into you've got your connected TVs, you've got people are watching content on the channels and platforms that they want to. And I think we're all, from a marketing perspective, just thrilled at the level of data that we have and cross-referencing multiple data points and ensuring that we're getting a holistic picture. Yes, very excited about the improvement and kind of level of detail in the measurement options that we have. I would say from an AI perspective, we, of course, are very interested in it. I think more so from an ideation and conceptual kind of development perspective. And it's helped streamline some of that initial concepting and ideation, if you will, from our creative team, and then helps us get to that conversation with the client before fully fleshing out an idea. We want to make sure that the IP and the talent of our creative team really shines through, and that's why you come to a creative agency, but we will use it, of course, more from an ideation and initial concepting phase.
That makes sense.
I've seen a number of agencies who, proudly tout they don't have their copywriters anymore. It's all AI. And we as an organization, while certainly wanting to leverage that, certainly believe in the talent that we have in-house and being able to fully understand the brand and have an individual understand and be able to represent that brand, whether it is from a copy or design perspective. And at this point are really making sure that we're keeping that pretty sacred in that client agency relationship.
What would you say are some best practices or real differentiators when it comes to the best performing content?
I would say, first and foremost, there's something called brand codes, right? So your brand should have some very distinct coding to it. So whether that's font, color, logo type, treatment of how something is applied within the visual approach, so that every time your core user sees it, it's very clear that is your brand and that there is no murkiness there, right? So brand coding, I think, is one of the first and foremost components. Strong positioning and very tight, given folks' attention spans, making sure that you're getting very quick to the point in terms of what you want your users to do.
And is that for both lower and upper funnel? What would be the distinction if you're making content for either of those?
I don't think there is a distinction. I think as you get higher funnel, you have longer format, you have longer time, you have more time to communicate the key message. But I think those fundamentals remain the same in terms of very quick readability and representation of your brand and understanding, yes, that is that brand. What's the core message? Is it consistent? And making sure it's a consistent message, and then ensuring that you're providing a really strong call to action.
You mentioned brand code. How does a business come to find their brand code?
You work with an agency, but it's very core, right? I think one of the things that we excel at Struck is most of our engagements involve kind of your core brand development, if you will. And I'm not talking about your logo. I'm not talking about your tagline. I'm talking about who it is from your brand position, right? What makes you unique and will differentiate you from your competitive set. What do you bring to the table that is unique? What are your consumers looking for? And then how can we solve for that? And once you have that core brand position and that kind of brand essence, that then helps inform and should inform not only what your visual messaging communication of what your brand is in the future, but also, quite frankly, some of the business decisions that you'll be making as well. And then that then informs what your logo looks like, quite frankly. Your brand positioning should be informing any nuance, any hidden meaning, any specific shapes or colors that are used that then inform to your, as you said, the brand codes that we want to be developing for our clients.
And you mentioned measuring even people's brain reactions to different creatives. I think that's so interesting, and that kind of brings into mind this concept of neuromarketing. Do you do any work around that?
Only in the sense of the testing stuff that we have, the testing elements that we have employed. I know that it is definitely on our strategy team's short list of things that they want to get into further to be able to offer to our clients. But particularly for our clients where the investment is considerable for, let's say, an advertising campaign, we believe it's imperative to ensure that the visual 30, 60-second spot is communicating the best of what we want to communicate in the most effective way. And that's where we've used that eye tracking. We've done focus groups with brain tracking and just understanding what scenes make people really excited, what scenes make people scared, and what maybe some confusion, and just digging into that to then be able to address that and adapt it for the best performing creative.
And do you have any like strategies you could share for what kinds of creative or what colors or some like advice you would give for creating more engaging content visually?
I would say it depends on the brand and what we want the user to ultimately do, to feel, and to do. But at the end of the day, I think it's having a really good understanding of your core consumer and doing the consumer research to help inform the creative development as we do with our creative briefs, and making sure that the approach is tested in whatever manner necessary. We've even done some very quick turn kind of online surveys, quick turn online testing, whether it's focus groups as well, just to get your core consumers' feedback is really helpful as well. But no blanket kind of best practices, if you will.
Yeah. Have you found that mirroring the consumer with the individual, if there's a person featured in the creative, mirroring the person you're trying to reach, is that better to connect with them, or do people respond to anybody that they see as long as it's like a person? Is there anything around that you found is more effective?
I think it's important to ensure that there is inclusivity and any individual can see themselves in whatever it is that we're creating. And where possible, we want to ensure that there is a diversity of talent that's represented within, let's say, a campaign or a visual kind of 30-second spot. We want to ensure that anyone within our core target audience can see them within that environment and or within that exchange. Of course, we want to make sure that there's diversity. For things like 15-second spots, you don't necessarily have the luxury of having the opportunity for multiple folks, and that's where it's really around evoking the emotion that you want anyone to be able to respond to that's in your kind of core audience, and having that emotional trigger that will resonate with anyone that we are hoping to target.
Yeah, so it does. So you do find that it increases engagement when you have the various audience members represented in the visual imagery?
Yeah, yeah, when possible, that is definitely helpful. But
That's
making
awesome.
sure that there's the breadth of diversity as well.
Curious about, let's say, okay, human creativity versus AI generated content. I know that You mentioned that you're sticking by the people generating the creative and the AI helps with the initial concepting. How do you think that balance will change in the future?
I think it will change. I think with all things new and things that seem to be very effective and very efficient, there will be probably a tipping point where perhaps the scale gets pushed a little bit further in the AI. But then I think it will start to normalize. I think we'll start to see where a tool like AI can be most effective and most efficient and helpful, and perhaps more of a tactical tool versus your inspirational, your kind of ideation and kind of really creativity, because AI is awesome. And again, what you feed it is what it will continue to iterate from. So I do see that there will be more of a leaning into AI, and I think there will be somewhat of a normalization there as well.
Yeah, I read recently that as we depend more on AI, it actually becomes less creative and it
Mm-hmm.
almost starts to converge more on itself because it starts to feed AI output back in as it searches for more information to train itself on. And so I really hope that I think you're right that in the short term, maybe 5, 10 years, we're going to start to lean more on AI as it gets better at delivering what we need. But I hope that in the long term, we go back to people led creativity. And I don't think that we'll ever get away from it completely. I'm very optimistic about that.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And quite frankly, the inputs and the benefits of using things like AI on the day-to-day business level function of developing contracts, reading contracts, synthesizing things, doing some of that desk research, if you will, absolutely love the capabilities there. I think, as you note, I think we'll see a little bit of a tipping point and then a normalization, and hopefully revert back to creativity of the human and collaborating in that manner.
Yeah. I want to ask because for the listeners out there that want to get into the creative space and maybe start an agency, how do you recommend breaking into this area? What would you recommend they study in school, or do you recommend school? What do you recommend is a good starting point to get into the area that you're in?
From a creative perspective, so I'm more on the business function of the agency, and I'll speak first to the creative perspective. Absolutely. If you're passionate about anything around design, creativity, I would certainly recommend exploring some schooling opportunities, if not any online tools, any podcasts, any master classes, even, if you will. They have a great breadth of resources to really identify your talent and then identify ways in which you could advance honing that talent. And of course, if you were to wanting to get into the agency world, just starting to get feelers out for those agencies that you're interested in, track their work, meet with the teams just to develop the rapport. I am a huge proponent of internships and being able to not only great if you love what it is and you've developed a talent, but even better if you learn that this is absolutely not the right thing for you, and being able to move on pretty quickly and assess what that next move is for you. And then from a business perspective, I would say any interest in helping brands and having empathy for business owners and helping them to achieve the goals that they're looking to achieve. And schooling wise, I don't know if there's any requirements there. I think it's just a constant curiosity and kind of emotional investment in the approach and how we work with brands, and developing those relationships to really develop those detail like we don't just have clients, we consider all of our clients partners because we really are invested in their business and they are in ours as well.
So, how does the client relationship process work for you? Walk us through the different types of touch points you might have with a client throughout an engagement and the general life cycle of a client?
Sure. So we have a client partner or team member on the client engagement team involved from the very beginning, from the moment that we get outreach of, hey, we'd love to work with you, here's what we're looking for. And we have a pretty methodical approach in how we have those new business conversations. So from the very beginning, your client engagement team is really involved in understanding your business goals, your objectives, 1-year, 3-year, 5-year plans. How are we going to measure success throughout that engagement? And ultimately, while they might come to us with say, hey, we want a website, through those conversations, we'll be able to say, yes, we understand you need a website, but actually, from a 10,000 foot view, here are 3 different ways we could engage that would help you achieve those goals. And sometimes we've actually said, we don't think website is actually your first priority. We think you should be focusing on this piece if that is your goal that you're looking to achieve. And then usually they really appreciate the bigger picture thinking on their behalf. And should they then become a client with us, then that client partner is paired with them throughout the engagement. And as I mentioned, you've got your client partner, you've got your strategist who are always involved in the day-to-day and understanding and having a seat at the table from the very outset, because we actually also want to make sure that we're working with the key decision makers, and often that's your C-suite. So we have a seat at the table, if you will, of understanding how what we're developing for them is helping them achieve their goals. So we'll be involved from brand planning to understanding what their marketing plan is and having input into what their overall marketing plan is, and kind of just your regular touch points, right? We want to make sure that the relationship is solidified enough so that any relationship, there are going to be ups and downs, and there are going to be those moments where you need to work and dig a little bit deeper, but we want to ensure that those relationships are there so that you can have that tough conversation on a Friday night on a cell phone. I'm just like, hey, that didn't go so great. Or what are we going to do about that? Because that didn't go the way we wanted it to. And just having and working in tandem as a strategic partner with our clients.
And I'm sure there's a lot of testing that goes on, and a lot of success, and a lot of things that don't succeed as much as you'd like. So how do you manage those difficult conversations? Do you have any advice for how to best manage difficult news?
Yeah, I think candor, right? With any relationship, it's important to be really honest. And if something didn't work the way we expected, hopefully there's some insight as to why that we can come to the table with as well. And then on the same part, hoping that the client comes to the table with their perspective as well, and or any inputs that they feel might have affected the success of that effort. Again, at the end of the day, we are all people. We all hopefully love what we do, and want to ensure that we're moving things forward in a successful manner. And just any relationship, honesty and candor and empathy are all things that we recommend we bring to the table as client partners.
So what about looking into the future of a creative agency? How do you expect your business to evolve, and the industry overall to evolve in 5 to 10 years?
I say we have seen a lot of evolution within the last 5 years. Specifically, as I'm sure you've seen as well, gone are the days of your agency of record. You've got your $10 million client, you manage everything, you've got a 5-year contract. Obviously, procurement has gotten involved on the brand side, making sure that they're efficient and making sure that they're tracking the right partners. And so we've learned to be a little bit more dynamic and engage more on a kind of project to project basis, or kind of annual basis, to ensure that we can prove our value and the results that we're delivering for our clients. As it continues to evolve, I would say that is something that we will continue to see. And unfortunately, the markets very much determine the willingness for brands to invest and or increase investment to help them achieve their goals. With the markets in the last 18 months, and I'm sure the next 18 months will have an impact on how eager brands are to invest right now to help achieve the goals that they're looking to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. What are you most passionate about within your career? What makes you most excited about the work you do?
I think it's the journey of the engagement, and oftentimes we have engagements that there are some pretty lofty challenges. There are some pretty large goals that they're looking to achieve, and helping to educate the client on what that roadmap can look like. And it will be a roadmap, because you can't achieve all of those things within a year, right? And the investment that you have. So really being that strategic partner to help educate and build that roadmap, and then ultimately seeing the results of that on the back end. That's the most rewarding part of just going through the entire process together. Additionally, I think I personally have a passion for mentoring, specifically women, and I don't think there is as much representation from a creative perspective from the female side of things. And so I have worked over the last few years working with various mentor groups and ensuring that they have the tools earlier on to have the confidence to take their seat at the table rather than ask to have their seat at the table. And so that's something that I've just personally been passionate about as well in the industry.
Any books, any podcasts, or influencers that you'd recommend people follow to learn more about this area?
I would say I never thought I would be super into X, Twitter, but I found that super interesting and educational and just a broad representation, primarily when I follow different agencies and creative thinkers and kind of leaders, and just seeing their approach and quick hot takes POV on current events is really interesting. And to your point earlier, I think that would be a really great space too for those who are interested in entering the industry. Just follow a bunch of folks who you can always unfollow if you're going, but cast your net out wide just to get some really good, diverse thinking and representation of the various folks and teams and talent out there.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to know. I think this has been a really fruitful conversation. I want to thank you, Kylie, for joining the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll talk to you soon.